Hello to you, friends. This is Dhamma on air, but first, the daily, early Buddhist contemplation. As long as this life lasts, I hereby take refuge in the Buddha. I hereby take refuge in the Dhamma. I hereby take refuge in the Sangha. I hereby seek shelter in the Buddha for the second time. I hereby seek shelter in the Dhamma for the second time. I hereby seek shelter in the Sangha for the second time. I hereby request protection from the Buddha for the third time. I hereby request protection from the Dhamma for the third time. I hereby request protection from the Sangha for the third time. The three refuges is hereby taken. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all killing. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all stealing. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all sexual abuse. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all dishonesty. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all alcohol and drugs, as long as this life lasts. From now on, I can hereby rightly consider myself to be a true Buddhist, with the blessed Buddha as my teacher. Hello to you, friends. This is Dhamma on air number 54, recorded on the 27th of January, the year 2017, inside the Cypress Hermitage on the Knuckles Mountain, central Sri Lanka, in a rainstorm that just passed. A big low pressure, and there fell some nights ago 120 millimeters of rain. Still grey, but soon we will have good weather again. There are one simile, one lotus offering, and 3 questions. But first, the normal intro. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honorable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha. We take the lotus offering first, which was from Mrs. Klima for her recently deceased beloved aunt, Mrs. Niedermeyer, from Vienna in Austria, and it comes right here. Hello to you, friends. This is the 4th lotus offering, here in 3 colors, red, white and blue, and we're gonna offer some lovely jasmine flowers also there. And this offering is from Mrs. Klima in Austria, Wien, and the merit is dedicated to her aunt, Mrs. Niedermeyer. This we're gonna offer to the Lord's Buddha's tooth up here in this temple. Now, inside this small Sutta light is the Buddha's bowl, the Buddha's begging bowl. group on the shrine. Yeah, go up on first floor. As just said, this is from Mrs. Klima of Austria, Vienna, for her aunt, Mrs. Niedermeyer. Thank you. Is Pusatagara, where in the old days the monks held their recitation of the Vinaya monastic code, the Pusatagara. One of the most beautiful Pusatagaras here on Sri Lanka, I think. Very intricate woodwork. From Mrs. Klima to her aunt, Mrs. Niedermeyer. last 10 minutes we're going to offer the Buddha material. Becoming Buddha. Inside here. Then we're going to offer water to the Buddha tree also. So much for the deceased and the lotuses. Here comes the simile. The simile of the cow's hide. It's from the Nandakovada Sutta, the Majjhima Nikaya number 146. Majjhima Nikaya, you see here, is a text collection of middle-length sayings from 2 pages to 25 pages long each. And there are 152 speeches in this Majjhima Nikaya text collection, which is approximately this thick. Highly recommendable reading. A huge number of subjects is touched upon with considerably depth and profundity. So it's a waste text collection of 152 speeches. Highly recommendable. Nevertheless, it's free on my website in one translation. I'll give the link below here. There, Venerable Nanda, he was asked to speak to the Bhikkhunis, because in the Bhikkhunis monastic rules, they should invite a monk to speech every fortnight. They will see twice a month. They should come a monk and speak some Dhamma to them. But this gentleman, he didn't want to speak because for some reason Nandaka, he had for many lives ago been a king, and for these females, these approximately 500 nuns, bhikkhunis he should speak to, these has been his concubines. And so he was afraid that some other enlightened beings, he was enlightened himself at that particular point, they should criticize him for not being able to be separated from this community of his former wives. So he was reluctant to go there. But then the Buddha requested him to go there, because the Buddha could see that with 2 identical speeches, he could make some of the nuns enlightened and all of them noble. That is to say, the least of them after 2 speeches was a stream entrant, a Sottapatti Magga. And so this was significant results from only 2 speeches. So Nandaka, he agreed to go and speak to the Bhikkhunis, which was his former wives. They have been together for many lives, actually. And this was the culmination of their career, both for Nandaka and for these 500 nuns. This you often see in samsara, that people travel through samsara in groups and are dependent upon a special person, in this case Nandaka. this might also go for me and those who see this video, actually, that we have been associated before, many times, in the order of hundreds of times. And the same goes with spouse and wife. They also have often been together for hundreds of lives. So they are propelled into the same karmic circumstances because of the same actions, because they copycat each ethical value from each other. And therefore they do the same, and when they do the same, the result is the same. They end up in similar or very closely related circumstances, also often in geographical proximity. But nevertheless, and Nandaka, he went to the nuns, and they put forward a chair and something, water to wash his feet. He washed his feet and sat down. And then he said, this will be a speech about questions. If you do not understand, you say to me, sir, we do not understand. If you understand, we say, sir, we fully understand. And so they said yes, they agreed to that agreement. And so he asked them, is the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the skin, and the brain, is that permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir, they said. Impermanent. I say, what is impermanent? Is that suffering or is it happiness? That is indeed suffering, Venerable Sir. But what is suffering, impermanent and subject to change? Is that suitable to regard that as self, as me, as I, as what I am? No, Venerable Sir. No, Venerable Sir. He said, this is good that you have understood this. But he said, then what about forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and mental ideas and mental states? Are they permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir, the nuns responded. And what is impermanent? Is that suffering or happiness? That is suffering, Venerable Sir, they said. He said, what is impermanent? Suffering and subject to change. Is that suitable to regard that as I, me, mine, myself, what I am? No, Venerable Sir, that is not suitable. And then he said, but you know, this visual consciousness, olfactory consciousness, gustatory consciousness, tactile consciousness, and mental consciousness, is that permanent or impermanent? That is impermanent, Venerable Sir. What is impermanent? Suffering and subject to change. Is that suitable to regard that as me, as mine, as what I am? No, Venerable Sir. No, Venerable Sir. That is not suitable. So he said, it is like this. You have a candle or an oil lamp, and that is burning on oil. And as long as there's oil and there's wick, and there's a flame, there will be a radiance. But this radiance of the flame is dependent upon the oil and the wick and the clay lamp itself. So if this lamp and its wick and its oil is impermanent, is it then fitting to regard the radiance from it as permanent? No, Venerable Sir, that is not. Because, they said, if the wick and the flame and the lamp and the oil is impermanent, then the radiance from this lamp is also impermanent. So he said, exactly, it is so. With the feeling that arises and depends upon eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, skin contact, and mental contact. This feeling, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral, is like this radiance. Since the six internal sense organs, they are impermanent, then this feeling arising, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral, this must also be impermanent. And what is impermanent is suffering. and what is impermanent and suffering and subject to change, that is not fitting to regard as I, me, mine, what I am, myself. Same is it with a tree. You have a huge standing tree. It's dependent upon the root and the trunk and the foliage. And then when there is this huge tree, then there also will be shade. Exactly so, he said, it is with the external sense objects. And the feeling arises from the external sense object, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral. This feeling arises from all external forms, all sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and external ideas and mental states. These are impermanent. What is impermanent is suffering. What is impermanent and suffering and subject to change, that is not suitable to regard as self, as I, as me, as mine, as what I am. So just as this shade is impermanent because it's dependent upon an impermanent tree, so is also these external sense objects. They are also impermanent. And the pleasure and pain and neutral feeling arising from these external sense objects, this feeling, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral, this also is impermanent. And therefore not me, mine, what I am. So also, he said, it is with a skilled butcher. He kills a cow. And then he takes a very sharp knife. And then he snits in between the hide, the skin, and the flesh. Take all the skin off. So he doesn't flog it, he just cuts off the skin without breaking it, without damaging it. Then he takes off the tendons. And then he put back the skin. Now, is it now suitable to say that the skin is joined with the bones and the flesh of the cow, just as before? No, we're not, they said. No, it's not the same. So also, he said, this consciousness, this sense consciousness, it is when these external forms the skin is taken off, then they are separated from the internal forms, from the internal sense organs, the rest of the cow. The tendon that has been removed, that is connecting the skin with the cow, is delight and lust, Nandiraga. So there you can see that it's a separate thing. So he says also, any feeling, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral, arises on this sense contact and this sense consciousness. When the I meet the forms, visual consciousness arise. Whatever feeling arises from that contact, from whatever is seen, heard, smelled, tasted, touched, or thought out, cognized with the mind, that also is impermanent. And what is impermanent is suffering. And what is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change is not suitable. It's not fitting to regard this as me, mine, or what I am. So they agreed upon that. And then he said this one should see, one should examine this closely in the light of the 7th links to awakening. One should examine this impermanent subject to change and suffering of the external sense sources, the internal sense object, and the 6 kinds of sense consciousness in the light of awareness, investigation, enthusiastic effort, rapturous joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. And then he said, now it's time to go. And then they thanked him and went away, these nuns. So he went back to the Devas monastery. And the Buddha said to him, Nandaka, well spoken, well spoken. It is like the new moon, which is kind of like a bow. When the new moon is there, then nobody is in doubt whether it's full or new, because everyone can see it's new. Just like that, you have spoken to the nuns. No one is in doubt. But you have to go there tomorrow and say the same thing again, once again. Then he went there again and came back again. And then the Buddha said to him, now Nandaka, well spoken. It's like the full moon. When the moon is full, nobody is in doubt whether it's full or not, because they can obviously see that. And so also these almost 500 nuns you have explained this to today. They have all entered the path. They have all become from stream entrant and upwards. It says they became noble from it. Some were enlightened. So the normal, uninstructed, ordinary individual, he thinks there's a world out there, that these forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and ideas, they're external to himself. And they are real in the sense that they are not dependent upon the consciousness that sees them. And the same thing he says, is my world. It's my world. Same thing with the internal sense organs, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the brain. This is me, this is mine. Doesn't see it with wisdom, with understanding that it's impermanent. And what is impermanent is suffering, ultimately speaking. And what is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change never can be an I, me, mine, an identity, a same self, a same person, a same world from one moment to the next. Can never be so. Never have been so. Is not now and never ever will be so. So there one detaches from the external world, from all the forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, ideas and mental states. And one detaches, one is released from one's own sense organs. One doesn't identify with them as if they were me, mine, what I am. And lastly, and most importantly, one detaches or relinquishes, is released from sense consciousness, from all forms of visual consciousness, auditory consciousness, olfactory consciousness, gustatory consciousness, and mental consciousness. It is this release that induces enlightenment gradually. So much for simile of the cow. There's three buzzwords here: the oil lamp, the external, the internal sense organs, the shadow of the tree that is impermanent, just like the feeling induced by contact with the external sense objects. And then this cow, which hide is separated from the body, which is symbolizing the sense consciousness itself. Now we then go to the questions. Question number 177. Are Devas interested in humans? Would they be around us as we go about our day? Yes and no. In general, they are not very interested in humans. There are many kinds of Devas. As we have spoken before, there's 31 levels of existence, and we are on level 5. This means there is 26 levels of Devas, which means shining beings or divine beings. And in general, they are not very interested. They're interested in humans to the same extent that we are interested in the level that is below us, namely the animals. and the ghosts and the hell beings. So in general, we are not very interested in that. We participate in some cooperation or some contact with them, but in general, the humans are not very interested in other kinds of beings except for humans themselves. So, and this also goes for the Devas. So they have their family business and their lovers and their pleasures and so on, which far supersedes the human, and therefore they are more captivating. However, nevertheless they are dependent upon human beings, so that human beings come up. This goes for the Tavahimsa Devas, which are 2 levels up. And they are still so, you can say, gross, that they are in war with the Asuras, the angry demons, which are kind of like Devas, which have fallen down to a lower level of freedom. And so they are dependent upon humans already coming upwards. So they have significant numbers to be able to defeat the Asuras in war. So every fortnight they will have a meeting where they discuss the situation among human beings, how pure human beings are, and how likely it is that human beings will be reborn at 2 levels up. They are reported, they have some reporters and some observers 1 level down at the 4 Great Kings. They have a lot of observers that look upon human beings, what they do, whether they fulfill the 5 precepts, whether they keep the observance day, and so on. And this will be reported to that meeting every fortnight. They will also go every full moon, they will go and look themselves to see what humans are doing in that regard. Then there are some earthbound devas which are living in the trees and inside houses also, just like Petas are, that we cannot perceive, but they can perceive us. Probably because they live in a slightly other time phase than we do. They are more regarded, they are not so much different from us, actually, from human beings, intelligence-wise and ability-wise, and they can be regarded as neighbors, and they have the same interest as we have for our neighbors. They have a limited interest for us as our neighbors, unless we encroach on their habitat, that is to say, tree devas. They fear very much that humans go out and cut down the trees, because then they loot their house. They live inside the trees as we live inside a house. And the same goes for all who live inside plants and so forth. Same thing also with devas who live inside a house. They will fear that the house is burned down or in other ways destroyed. So they are like neighbors, you can say. The higher devas feel that humans are somewhat repulsive because they, at this distance of several hundred meters, can smell our body odor, and this they feel is very disgusting. So they feel that human beings stench, like we feel pigs have a repulsive smell. Which also can be, if it's a big pigsty, it can also be smelled for 50 meters, 100 meters, several hundred meters of this fermented urine that has a very, very strong smell. And so also devas don't contact human beings in general because they feel we have a bad smell, we stench. Except for those who are noble, or those who they say fulfill the morality, they have a pure morality, they will have a good smell that smells all around, even as if going against the wind. So they will contact and help these good individuals. In general, devas help human beings because they are attached to them or have some emotional connection to them. That can be former spouses will help their spouses down on earth. Former family members, 7 generations back, they will look back and feel pity if one is in a bad state or something unhappy is going to happen. And then if they have the ability to interfere, they will do it. In some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases. And they are aware of that it will happen. So usually there is some connection between the divine beings that interact with human beings. Family connection or connection through religion, they can be Buddhist, they can be nobles. Sakka Indra, which is king of the Tavatimsa heaven, he's a stream entrant. And he will try to protect all Buddhists. Though the Hindus, they think, of course, he is Hindu. But he is actually a stream entrant. And a stream entrant doesn't take any other teacher than a Buddha for all the remaining 7 lives. So we can unambiguously say that Indra, though also a deity in the Hindu world, is definitely a Buddhist. So they don't go around and follow us in that regard, in this regard. But they can sometimes do. They can do this in disguise. That is to say, they can disguise themselves as an animal. Just like that. Very easy for them. They can disguise themselves as any kind of human being, in any kind of clothing, in any kind of age. And they put others in situations where they will test them whether they will do good or bad in that particular situation. And that happens, that's reported in the text in many times, many times. So this gives some truth to the Buddhist saying, be careful, you don't know who is who. And this is really true. You don't know whether the monkey is a monkey, or the dog is a dog, or the human is a deva. You don't know who they are. They could also be Mara. They could be also one of, because he's a high deva. 11. Very powerful. So can manifest as anything, a cloud, anything inanimate and animate. And this should, when Mara does it, then it's for political motives, because he will enforce his view that sensual pleasure is the highest happiness. And this he has a fanatic political opinion about, so he won't accept any other opinions about that. So this he want to enforce on all beings. Just like a dictator wants to enforce his political views, Mara, which unfortunately has the power over other people's creations, that is the power over other people's thoughts, over other people's speech, and over other beings, up to his own level, other beings' actions, behavior. So he enforced that. And that you can see on planet Earth to a large extent today. So I hope this covers the ground reasonably. When there is Deva-human interaction, there's also the first book in the Samahita Nikaya, which you see here, is all questions about from Devas to the Buddha. They come in the night, appear in his kuti, and then they stand to one side, and then they ask him whatever they are unsure about. So that is also worth reading. The first book in the Samahita Nikaya, which you see here, is all Deva human interaction, where Deva asks the Buddha Gautama about something, which we all can learn from also, of course. So nobles, they ask formally family members, spouse, and then the earth should be considered as our neighbors. Question 178. What is causing unusual, repulsive, invasive thoughts you have no intention of having? Can this be Mara attacking? Yes, it can indeed be Mara attacking. Indeed be Mara attacking. And just be aware of them. The sign of that is not our own thoughts exclusively, is that they are unusually wacky. They are unusually hateful. They are unusually greedy, or unusually ignorant and neglecting, or opinionated. So this will, since Mara has a force, or like also other on his level, Paramita, Deva, they have the power over others' creations, that is to say, others' mental formations, verbal formations, and bodily activity. They have the power over that. So, but only if you accept it and is unaware of it. It's like being pushed in the back, mentally speaking. This he does all the time. One example is Buddha Gautama was should go pintabat, begging around in a village, and then Mara wants to annoy him, and then he made the thought appear inside all the villagers' mind that this monk, the Buddha in this case, that came, he was a pedophile, a criminal that had sex with children. So they don't gave the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, any food. And then Mara, he stand at the end of the road when the Buddha came out the village with an empty bowl. I said, did you get any food? No, Mara, I didn't give any food. But then go in there again, he said. He was disguised as a young man. No, Mara said, because then you would make them hit me with a stick. So this is kind of like the tricks he will do. Another example is that when somebody is thinking about you very strongly, it's persons that you know and that you have been emotionally connected to, either aversively or there has been attraction to some degree. Need not be essential attraction, can be any kind of sympathy or habitual being together like family members or so on. Especially when they're close, but can also be from a distance where they think about you, similar thoughts that they think will appear in your mind. It's very strong when they're close, but even at a distance, that is to say on the other side of the planet, it's still recognizable. And this means that your thoughts are by no means private, and your thoughts are by no means your own only. In some cases they are, but they are continually influenced by this non-local aspect of other beings' consciousness and what they do, and in particular if the address of their thought is you, personally, your individuality. Then this, whatever they think, will be, it can be sexual fantasies, it can be very hateful, aversive thoughts. This will appear or echo in your mind also. One example was a Thai monk. He was sitting and meditating in a hut, in a rice hut that was up on poles out in a rice field. And then a young schoolgirl, she came walking a little distance from there on a footpath, and then it starts raining very heavily. Then she goes, without seeing the monk, she didn't know he was there. It was kind of like a cover of palm leaves on the rice hut, very common. And then she sat under the hut and sat there. And there she had apparently some erotic fantasies. Then the monk, elderly monk, in his late 70s, he suddenly had fantasies that he got something up his anus. The girl was probably thinking that she had sex with some man or boy she was in love with, and she was penetrated. And this spilled over, so to speak, or affected the consciousness of the monk sitting in close proximity to it, less than 2 meters from her, above her. So he felt that something, or had this thought appears in his mind that something was penetrated up his anus and up in his anal canal. But he didn't, he just noticed it. And that's the technique, notice it. And then those identify with it. And then he also noticed that he knew there was a young girl, in 15 or 16 years old, sitting down below him. And when she went away, these thoughts also went away. So it's an example about a connection. This all consciousness which has a wave phenomenon, which is non-local, not only inside the head, not only inside the brain, but everywhere present, smeared out in space. This means that the monk's consciousness and the girl's consciousness will be overlapping. And with all wave phenomena, there will be interference. That is to say, one wave system will interfere with the other wave system. Just like two waves that meet on the ocean, they will interfere. And this causes spurious phenomena that we also subconsciously or consciously even experience themselves. Once you just notice them, not identify with them. Just if it's greedy thoughts, are greedy thoughts, greedy thoughts. Sexual fantasies. Aversive thoughts are anger is in my mind. And then it will pass by. Not follow after it. Starting to agree with it or disagree with it or fight with it or put something into it or brew on it or make it more or make it less or something. Just notice it, observe it completely passively. And then let it go. Let it go wherever it wants to go. It is not you. It is not yours. It is not what you are. It is not yourself. Neither is it somebody else. It is just what it is. Passing mental states. Neither more nor less. So this is the technique. Notice it. Notice it. Label it twice. Whatever it is. See it arise, see it stay present, and notice when it goes away. Having noticed it, it goes away many times. Then one loses fear or emotional reactions to these very repulsive thoughts that can attack the mind. Whether from Mara or from one of his soldiers or from other people, whether good or bad. When these waves of interference patterns of a mental nature, they come waving in. Well, one just notices it and learns from it, and then one sees them go. And when one sees them have noted their dissolution, their spontaneous dissolution, many times, then one doesn't fear them anymore. They don't bother anymore. They to some extent become interesting in their colorful nature and how they are, how weird they are, how crazy they are, how insane they are, all these thoughts passing in front of consciousness, mental consciousness. But if one doesn't cling to them, or attach to them, or follow after them, then they pose no problem. However, it can be difficult to detach from them. Both if they are sexual fantasies, then one can brew on for ages. Then one can do this or that posture, blah, blah, blah. Or if it's hateful, then also one can brew for it. Then I will revenge in this or that way, or blah, blah, blah. Then one should just notice that now as one is going along with it, and there one forms intentional karma. There one agrees with it. One doesn't observe it. One is not aware of this. One is following after these thoughts, these repulsive thoughts, whether of an ignorant nature or of a greedy nature or of a hateful nature. One is not aware of it. But the moment one is aware of, when one can say, cut, stop, label, and then notice that they dissolve, they disappear, they fade out, they evaporate on the very spot. That's very satisfying when done. Because it's kind of like easy cruising, mentally speaking. When one just has these thoughts, these waves of interference patterns of whatever kind, just let them pass. Just let them pass. Then go back to the meditation object. Go back to awareness. Go back to equanimity. All these mental constructions, they are conditioned. But this equanimity, it is peace. It is silence. It is exquisite. This equanimity. Upekkha. So much for question 178. The last question, 179. 41 minutes. Was the Buddha silent when asked about the existence of God, of a God creator? No, he was not. There's somebody who says that he was. That's famous that he was silent when asked about a God creator. Then he was silent. No, he was not silent about. He was never directly asked about, is there a God creator? However, he spoke many times against a God creator. A God creator principle in Buddhism is called either Isara or Brahma. And he said that those who are of this view, whatever happiness or pain or neutral feeling this person experiences, all that is due to the creation of a supreme deity. Isara nima hetu is cause. So it's caused by an Isara, an almighty creator God. Then if it is so, he said in the Devadaha Sutta is Nikaya number 11, which Nikaya you see here, the long speeches of the Buddha, Devadaha Sutta. Then everything that we feel is pre-made by this creator God. Then we cannot do anything about it. Then there's no need to do anything. Then people stop doing anything because, whatever I feel, whatever I do is a creation of God, so I cannot do anything anyway. So there's no need to do anything. So this is a very nihilistic view, actually. And it's the ultimate fleeing from your own responsibility. I say, I did bad, it was creator God. I experienced some good, I was the creator God, blah, blah, blah. Huh? So it forces inaction upon these beings who think there's a creator God. Their destinies are determined by his hands, so they have no influence over their own destiny, if they really believe that. Then it's only the creator God, Isara, who can determine their destiny. But that's actually not so. You can prove this to yourself. You can decide whether to close your hand or open your hand. There is free will. It's not completely free. It's conditioned to some extent, but you can say, with 2 fingers up or 1 finger up, or open hand or closed hand. You can make this experiment for yourself. Huh? So there is free will to some extent. And this free will means that it cannot be the complete predetermined creation of an almighty God. That is Babel. Then he also said that there was some naked ascetics on the Buddhist time. They went around naked and they burned themselves and so on. They did all kinds of cruel things to themselves because they had this idea, if they tortured themselves, then the sins will be diminished, and then they will gain enlightenment by this self-torture. And then he said, if this is created, if a creator God, Isara, an almighty creator God, have created their destiny, then it must be a very wicked, very evil creator God. Papakena Isarena. So this Isara, this creator God, he must be Papa, evil. And the Jews have asked themselves the same question when they were killed during Second World War. Where was God there? If he's our Father and if he helps us, why didn't he help us during the killing of the Nazi concentration camps during the Second World War? Huh? And really consider this. If this evil in this world were created by God, is he then good? Or what? And is it something worshipping, creating this? All these evils are in the world today. Is it impressive? Obviously not. Huh? Then there is a same, another nice saying is, a monk, he sat out in the forest, the Buddhist time, and then he asked himself the question, this solidity, fluidity, heat and motion, when it disappears, where does it go? And so he asked everybody, nobody knew. And he went up to the next Buddha as quick as he could ask. He could stretch his arm, he appeared among the next level Devas, and they couldn't. And they set all levels up to the Brahma level. You go up and ask the Brahma Devas. And then he went there. And then they said, when he came there, the Mahabrahma is not here, but you sit over there and wait. Then he will come. There will appear some lights, and then there appeared some lights, and then Mahabrahma came into this company of Brahmas. And then he asked, Venerable Sir, please tell me, do you know where solidity, fluidity, heat and motion, where they go when they disappear? And then Mahaprajna said, I am Mahabrahma, I am father of all that have been, I'm the maker, I'm the creator of everything, the foremost. So this monk, he was not very impressed. He said, that might be so, when I was certain, but that was not my question. My question was actually, when solidity, fluidity, heat and motion disappear, where do they go? Then the Mahabrahma said again, I am Mahabrahma, father of all that have been, all that will be, maker and creator, the foremost of all. Yes, Venerable Sir, this so far so good, I have understood that, but that was actually not the question. The question was where the solidity, fluidity, heat and motion goes, when it goes. And so Mahaprabhu says the same thing, third time. And then he pulls away the monk from the others and conceals him so they can. And then he said, you come to the wrong person. I don't know where solidity, fluidity, heat and motion goes. But you go back to the Buddha and ask the question. And so this the monk did. And then the monk, the Buddha said, the question is wrongly posed. It is when consciousness is there, then fluidity, solidity, heat and motion appears. When consciousness is not there, then there is no heat, motion, solidity or fluidity. And this is a fairly subtle and profound answer. If you really ask the Buddha who is the creator, then he will also say, this is not a who, it's a what. If you ask him, what is the creator of the world? Then he will say, ignorance and craving. This all Buddhas say just after they are enlightenment. They have a famous poem. They say, builder, now I see you. Before, many existences have wandered, seeking who was the builder, who was the creator, who was the constructor of this world, of this existence. Now I see it is ignorance and craving. You would not build this house, this world, this existence again. For your rafters and the main beam has been broken. This mind has been distilled irreversibly into silence. This they all say is unambiguous. All Buddhists say this poem, using the exact same words. So the builder, the creator, is ignorance of craving. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of the Four Noble Truth. The Four Noble Truth is 1. All this is suffering. 2. Craving is the cause of suffering. 3. Absence of craving is the end of suffering. 4. The Noble Eightfold Way is a method to end suffering. Ignorance of that is the creator. Because then you think you can create something else than suffering. And then you start creating. And this all conscious beings do. And then the world appears. The other thing, craving is craving for what? Is craving for sensing, for sensuality, for seeing, for hearing, for tasting, for touching, for thinking. Is craving for becoming this and that, rich, famous, praised, powerful. Is craving for non-becoming, craving for not becoming, stupid, dead, old, ugly, and so forth. This ignorance and craving is the creator. And when this ceases for the stream of individual consciousness, then suffering also ceases. Because then no suffering is created. It is as simple as that. To put it in a modern context, there have appeared over the last couple of decades a very interesting principle in physics, especially in the field of cosmology. And it's called the anthropic principle in modern cosmology. It was coined by Brandon Carter, and there's several books, I will show them here, written by John D. Barrow and Frank Tipler, John Gribbin, on the anthropic principle. And this is because when one looks at the natural constants, gravity and all kinds of physical constants, then they seem to be fine-tuned to biological life, to the emergence of human beings and other biological beings, to an unlikely extent. So there's many possible physical universes, but the one we live in seems to be fine-tuned to the existence of conscious observers. And this is called, then it seems then obvious that maybe these conscious observers has been involved in creating this universe. The anthropic principle comes in many variants, but the one I would like to bring into being here are the participatory anthropic principle by John Archibald Wheeler, which formulated around the 1990s. So something like 27 years ago. And this says that basically that observers are necessary to bring the universe into being. And it agrees with, as you see in this picture, it agrees with John von Neumann's and Eugene Wigner's quantum mechanics, or interpretation of quantum mechanics, which is from 1932, which says basically consciousness causes collapse of the wave mechanical, or the quantum mechanical wave function. And there it says that quanta of energy can be either a wave that is everywhere present, and when this collapses, it becomes a particle that has mass and will become matter, and that has color and form and so on. But if it's not observed, then it has no specific location. It doesn't have any specific properties whatsoever. It doesn't have any spin, any mass, any charge, any observer. It doesn't have before it's observed. It's just a potential, a probability to be. And this means that it is a conscious being that puffs a swift, as some physicist, Wolf, has put it. He puffs a swift, collapses the wave function, and then the physical world appears. Then it's no wonder that this physical world that appears is fitted to survival of these conscious beings. And therefore it's called the participatory observer principle, anthropic principle. So the observer participates in manifesting what he observes, moment by moment. Again, you see here that there's no external world that is independent of the observer. Anytime you speak about the world, you speak about a consciousness and its object, and nothing else than that. The Buddha said all philosophers, scientists, whoever, they have to come back to this phenomena of contact, phassa, which is a sense organ which meets its object, and then this sense consciousness arises. The meeting of these three, for example, the eye, and the form, and visual consciousness, is contact. That is the reality. This contact, this experience, which is strictly speaking a mental phenomena. This is called radical empiricism, insisting on experience as the ontological reality. Experiences is what exists. Archibald Wheeler, he went one step further because he wanted to reformulate the entire physics within the concept of information. And he coined the phrase "it from bit." So he says that information is a fundamental reality. It's not mass, it's not particles, it's not fields, it's information. So it emerges from bit. Bit is the unit of information. The amount of information to answer yes or no on a given question. That is 1 bit. And you have a kilobit is 1,000 bits for this picture. And this video will be approximately 1 gigabit. No, 5 gigabit. Difficult to upload of information. So you're also looking at information now. John Archibald Wheeler, he takes it one step further. We say the world is information and you are information, and nothing else from that. So this it from bit doctrine says that information sits at the core of all physics, and every it, whether it's a particle or a field, derives its existence from conscious observation. And that solves the measurement problem in quantum mechanics, where you cannot say that there is anything before the measurement occurs, neither after the measurement occurs. It's only at the moment of the measurement, the conscious observer measurement, that you can speak about the properties of given observables, of given elementary systems, such as photons, electrons, neutrons, which we say the world and ourselves are made of. So this participatory anthropic principle, which is a fairly modern construction and fairly fancy, I'll have to say, this is on the fringes of physics still. It's on the fringes and interplay between philosophy and physics and cosmology. And this, as I say, it agrees with John von Neumann's and Eugene Wigner's quantum mechanics interpretation. Consciousness causes collapse, epitomized in Wigner's friend paradox, which is a development of Schrödinger's cat paradox. And then it also agrees with early Buddhism as formulated by the Buddha Gautama. So here you have kind of like three converging theories that meet on the exact same subtle interpretation of what reality is, how it exists, which is the science of ontology. So this, I think, is very, very interesting, because these are from entirely different ages. The Buddha would have spoken about this 520 years before Christ. And quantum mechanics is from the early 30s, late 20s. And this anthropic principle that conscious observers has something to do with the emergence of the physical world. This is from the 90s and is still discussed, but is carving a niche into mainstream physics. And this niche has come to be there. It's not going to be chased out, because physics is wide open right now. Wide open. There's a lot of conflicts. There's a lot of matter that is missing. There's dark matter that cannot be explained. 80% of the matter of the universe, the mass of the universe, nobody knows where it is or what it is. And so physics is has to dig deep in our age. It's not a final thing. It's completely out in the open. And their anthropic thinking, that is to say, conscious observers, usually we say it's only humans, but that's only egocentric thinking. Anthropic principle will go for all conscious observers, from ants to humans, to worms, to devas, to divine beings of all kinds. All possible kinds of conscious observers will have the ability, inherently, to make this quantum mechanical wave function collapse for each elementary system, and thereby convert the quantum of energy from a wave field, which is non-local and not observable, not visible, to a particle which is local and which is observable and which has mass and properties, and which we normally, a humongous collection of these particles, we call the world and our body. This, I think, is very, very interesting, that there is this convergence of ideas across many centuries of thoughts by, first of all, the Buddha Gautama, and then John Archibald Wigner, pupil of Niels Bohr, and then Eugene Wigner, and John von Neumann, father of mathematics behind contemporary orthodox quantum mechanics. This says that there is a convergence of the idea. It smells of truth. these disparate ideas and disagreement among ideas, they come by the tons. But convergence of ideas from different cultures, from different people, from different ages, they speak that there must be something absolute down there on the bottom of this worldview. And this I find highly interesting. So therefore, the title of this Dhamma on Air, number 55, will be the Participatory Anthropic Principle. Thank you for your attention, contribution, and participation. If you want to hang on all the way home to Nibbana, the highest happiness, the absolute freedom, then click subscribe down there. If you want to gain more information, or you want to support this Dhamma sharing, hover with your mouse over this region, and then the small eye will appear. Then click the eye, and then there will be 5 links for you to create your own future with, your own probability shadow with, right there, right then. Thank you, and have indeed a nice, probable day. You heard Bhikkhu Samahita from the Cypress Hermitage on the Knuckles Mountain, Pamparella, Central Hill Country, Sri Lanka. Please subscribe to the Google group Buddha Direct and visit the website whatbuddhasaid.net. May all beings become thus happy thereby. Thank you. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honorable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha. As the next Buddha, the noble Arya Ajita Maitreya will say, you can come as you like, but you pay as you go. Thank you for your contribution, and have a nice day.